Hello, welcome to Jewish Museum Milwaukee's Museum Moments. This is our week to celebrate Hanukkah. Of course, we started early and Hanukkah extends. It starts tonight and it goes till next week. It's an 8-day celebration. And in thinking about Hanukkah, we started out earlier this week talking to Rabbi Tova Shaler about kind of the traditions of Hanukkah generally. Today, I'm really excited that our guest is going to share with us Hanukkah in Israel, the evolution, and what's going on in this crazy moment with Hanukkah. So it's my pleasure to introduce Uria Roth, who has been the Milwaukee community emissary to Israel and has continued to do a tremendous amount of work under really, really strange circumstances. When you signed up to be a Shaliach, you were not signing up to do it in little boxes.
Well, you do what you do. You do what you have to do.
You do what you have to do. That's why we're here. So Hanukkah in Israel.
Yeah.
Is it, I always tell people Hanukkah's not that big deal of a holiday, but how does it feel if you're celebrating Hanukkah in Israel?
Well, I have to say that I think thanks to I think this is the one holiday, the one Chag that actually had a tremendous influence by the American Jewish communities towards Israel. Once you see Hanukkah and the way it was celebrated in America with the gifts and 8 days, and it's it is a big deal here. The Israelis, I think, especially in the last 20 years, they do want to make a big deal out of it, and they do want to make it a festival. I think this is probably the only holiday when there's kids are still go to school on Pesach or Sukkot.
Right.
There's people still go to work. So it does have this impact that we celebrate Chanukah, but unlike other holidays, we only celebrate it starting at 5 p.m. every day. It's not a full day, all day long celebration. And also because, we are more traditional with a lot of religious people in Israel, Chanukah doesn't have a special tefillah every day, and you have to shut down everything. You keep your life going, and 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. we all gather and have our hadlakat neot. We are lighting the candles all together. But it was always about family. It was always about having everyone together, and there's also maybe the tradition is also here. In a lot of families, it's every child and every adult is having his own Chanukiah, his own menorah, and then when you look from the window, you see there's because there's usually a lot of kids for every family, there's 4, 5, 6, 8 Chanukiot at menorah all together, and it does give you a sense of of a real festival.
When before we started talking, you said that there was kind of a shift in the underpinnings of the holiday in the 1930s or so. Can you describe what that looks like and how that relates to kind of an Israeli ethos?
Well, yeah, I think the Zionist movement really wanted to shift the whole celebration of Hanukkah of just, we had this little, oil that was supposed to last for a day and then lasted for 8 days, and then just embrace not that miracle, but the miracle of we call it me'atim neged rabim, which means just a few people against so many, and the fact that the war is in the heart of the miracle. We were 10,000 versus million, and we were able to win. But more than that, I think in the mid-30s, the Zionist movement, especially in Israel, wanted to make it, instead of a religious holiday, want to make it to a secular holiday. Once you take the miracle oil, make it into our our strength, our power, our weapon, our guns, then it's not about God, it's about us, it's about the people. And I think it was the one holiday when one song, one poem, we call it the torch song, Shir HaLapid, that was talking about it's not God who made that miracle happen. It was us humans. It was us, the people. And I think that made it I think Hanukkah, unlike a lot of holidays, Hanukkah is celebrated by everyone because it belongs to whoever is religious, and especially for the secular people, the secular communities in Israel, all of them are celebrating Hanukkah as well.
It's interesting because, in America, there's this big idea of trying to put the religion back into Christmas. But here you're saying that the political leaders are actually saying, let's divorce the religious meaning and make this a political holiday instead. So I find that a secular holiday instead.
Well, it didn't help them because at the end of the day, when like Israel was established in 48, and ever since then, every year I feel like there's more of like religious component getting into like the public. And in Israel we don't have a separation between state and church, and it's like Chanukah is still part of like the battle between like what kind of Chanukah are we celebrating? What kind of miracle? What are we like talking about with our kids in school, how we educated about Chanukah? It's still an ongoing discussion.
So it's that's an interesting. I don't think I ever knew that there was this kind of debate over the secular or religious nature of Hanukkah in Israel, and which is clearly a big part of the discourse around Christmas. So, also in talking about discourse and Hanukkah, as we were starting out here, you said, "Oh, this has been a little bit of. It's more than a balagan. A balagan is chaos." What is going on around Hanukkah and celebration in a time of quarantine?
Well, I have to say, in Israel, and probably most people do know that we had already like 2 lockdowns, and every time there was a lockdown, it was always like around a holiday. It was around Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and it was like, because like when we have holidays, that's when we go out and that's where we gather, and that's what people see each other. So everyone knew when the second lockdown was over, everyone, okay, now we're ready for Hanukkah. 3rd lockdown will be in Hanukkah. And then there was like, I guess the prime minister and the government in Israel tried to make it, we won't call it a lockdown, we call it a curfew. And then we're thinking about like from 4:30 right before like sundown until like 9 p.m. there will be a curfew. You have to be at your home. You can't be with anyone else besides your family.
Basically to just curb people lighting candles in other people's spaces.
Yes, but they never looked into the legal aspect of it. Apparently curfew was never used in Israel since the British mandate in 1947. It was not really, there was like, they're trying to find like a legal angle to it so we can do it, but it didn't work out. So they thought, okay, we won't call it a curfew. It would be like a 2 hours lockdown every day. And then there was like so many, like every day you read, like you went online and you read there's like a different way to how can we control, make sure that the spread of the virus will not happen too much during Chanukah. Until 2 hours ago at noon Milwaukee time, it was 8 p.m. in Israel, and Netanyahu,
already the first night of Hanukkah. Hanukkah has started in Israel.
Yes, there will be no restrictions at all. That's the decisions right now. They even decided to reopen the mall all over Israel, which is like people will have a chance to buy a gift and stuff. So it happening during the first night of Hanukkah, there was like, you didn't even know what you were allowed and not allowed to do. But I have to say, it's also because of like, it's our political system. But I feel like here in America, there's like, people know where they stand, what they do and what they won't do in general in the pandemic. I feel like also it's not just the government, it's like the state of Israel, the people of Israel, the citizen. They're like, okay, what are we doing now? Today, I feel very comfortable with inviting people for a Chanukah candle. Maybe for the 3rd night, I won't feel so comfortable about it. So it's like
every day there's a recalibration in the country to decide.
And that, I guess it was a mess all over the world for the last 9 months. I felt like there in Israel, there was like really weekly different perspective restrictions and things. It's really hard to follow. And sometimes I like at some point you say, okay, I really don't understand. I just hope they're going to have a great Chanukah.
I just hope that too. I know there's one kind of other key difference I've always known about Hanukkah in Israel versus Hanukkah here, and that goes to dreidels.
The dreidels.
Yes.
Do you mean the letters? The nest?
Yes.
Yes.
And I'm guessing dreidels are a Eastern European invention based on, based on a tradition that there was gambling to cover the fact that people were studying Torah, that this is, oh, look, they would play dreidel. But How has that changed around when in Israel?
Well, I guess what you mean, like there's like one letter that is different, right? We use Nun Gimel Hey Pei, and there's Nun Gimel Hey Shin, and it's like the miracle happened here versus the miracle happened there. And I always felt like, in a sense of like, this is how we distinguish ourselves. We are the not just the chosen people that live in the chosen country. It's how we distinguish ourselves from the other Jews that do not live in Israel. So they have a different dreidel.
So this is the sign.
Yeah, it's like one day when they will move to Israel, they can use our dreidels. And I felt like, this is like how, that will be their dream, to move and to use the right dreidel with the letter pay, which is like pull here. And it's really about like telling ourselves the miracle didn't happen. It not just happened here. Like we saw it with our own eyes, and this is like something to be proud of. And I felt like, for the most part, like us, the Israelis, especially the Jewish communities all over Israel, we needed that, to embrace ourselves, to say this is like, we live here because the history of the Jewish people really happened right here. And
do you know if that letter change happened around the same time as the kind of Zionist evolution around the underpinnings of the holiday?
I think so. Although I looked it up, I feel like there's a lot of like opinions of like, when did it happen, and also like the history of the dreidel. When does it started here in America? When it started in Israel? But I felt like, unless I'm wrong, it did start even here, without any letters. Like someone has decided, there was a dreidel, and then to add the letters.
So someday I'm going to have to do a museum moment deep dive to figure out who that person is.
Yeah, but I think, to my opinion, and maybe I'm wrong, is like he did that, and he was like, I can imagine someone here in Israel trying to like tell his kids that they need to know that the miracle happened right here next to their house, right here in Jerusalem,
in Modi'in,
or Modi'in, or Eilat, or whatever. And it's like, look, we have our own dreidels. We're special.
So as we're wrapping up here today, traditionally in America, the foods we recognize as kind of Hanukkah foods are sufganiyot and, jelly-filled donuts, right, and latkes, greasy foods. What are some of the other food traditions in Israel around this time of year?
Yeah, I feel like we have the same thing. There's nothing. The only thing I would say that the culture around the sufganiyot is now, like, if you look it up, if you look at the lines now waiting outside of like the special, there's a place in Jerusalem called Kadosh. I saw a line of 300 people waiting for their one sufganiyah, and they limited like 3 per person, like 3 sufganiyot.
That sounds like a social distancing nightmare.
Oh, well, yeah, well, I don't even go. I want to go there, but there's like the culture around sufganiyot, who's going to do it like more special, and who's like more unique, and who is like, and it's like, it's getting like.
What are some of the fillings that people are doing?
Now they even like spicy donuts, and you can have like a salmon sufganiyah, which is like something like, I don't even want to think about it, but you name it, like a falafel sufganiyah with a falafel, which is kind of like, wow. Or like even with meat, you wouldn't know, like you wouldn't even imagine. The thing is that like there are special places starting like late October, early November, that they start selling the sufganiyot, and it's always getting like
earlier. You're like the pumpkin spice or the peppermint latte of Israel.
Yes, exactly. And if you go to Jerusalem, like, like someone will send you over WhatsApp, forget about all the sufganiyot you knew by now. Go to this place in like Thursday at 3 to 5. They have a special sale, and it's like a competition who gets the more special sufganiyah. And then he posted it on like Instagram, on Facebook, and like, guys, like, whoever tried this kind of sufganiyah.
Social media sufganiyot wars. I love it. I actually really would love to try a meat-filled sufganiyot. I know that you and I probably share that. Uria, happy Hanukkah. Thank you so much for sharing with us today. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Toda rabba. Thank you so much. Chag Sameach.
Chag Sameach. Thank you to our sponsor, Robin Cohen, for making this and all of our museum moments possible. If you would like to give us a little Hanukkah present, feel free to hop on over to jewishmuseummilwaukee.org. You can make a donation there. We really appreciate your support, and thanks for joining us today.